I look at the alternative media, as it's called, which is where a film like this would come out of. Obviously, it wouldn't come out of the mainstream. And what's developed over the years that this alternative media has come into being, what's developed is the alternative mainstream. And almost everyone has a here and no further point. And just because you are aware that there's a banking scam and a political scam and engineered wars, doesn't mean that your mind is open to the deep in the rabbit hole areas that will explain where all that's actually ultimately coming from. You will have people who will go so far, but then their belief system, their sense of credulity, will say here and no further. The idea that life as we know it has only developed on this one planet, in this one slither of frequency, is ridiculous. But the human perception has been so programmed with limitation, with a sense of I can't, the sense of it cannot be, that it's left to very few, compared with the global population, to explore beyond that sense of can be. And that's why these films are not made in greater abundance. I was in America on a speaking tour. I say a speaking tour. In those days, a speaking tour largely meant talking to myself. You know, I mean, I went to Chicago and spoke to 8 people, or near Chicago anyway. But on that speaking tour, over a period of about 15 days, I met 12 separate people, and I was going to a different place every day, who told me the same basic story, how they'd seen humans turn into a reptilian form and then back again. And it was such a common theme that they were describing that I started exploring from that time. So it came into my life very quickly. I'd had kind of heard like little mentions of it before and just let it go. But in this 15-day period, that really focused my mind. So there's something to look at here. When you're faced with that situation with, or you know, one person after another in different parts of America telling you the same thing, you can either go, I'm not going there, what will people say if I start talking about this stuff? Or you can say, information's my guide, I'm going there. What then happened is I came back from there to the Isle of Wight, and I was meeting someone, actually not very far from here, who had been married to a Satanist, who had been the warden for Burnham Beeches. Burnham Beeches, out west of London, is owned by the City of London, the financial district. And it is a big place of Satanism and very strange happenings. It's wooded copses and few open areas. And she asked to meet me because of what I was writing about, because she wanted to tell me about the Satanism which she experienced. And she told me when I met her about seeing Ted Heath, former Prime Minister of Britain, took us into the European Union, doing a satanic ritual at Burnham Beeches, because she lived there in the warden's house. And when this conversation was finished, and you know, I was having a cup of tea, and I was just finished my tea, and I was putting it down and turning to go, and I just said to her as a throwaway line, you know, I've just come back from America, and I met all these people that kept telling me how they'd seen people turning to reptiles. And I heard her first, and I turned around. She's going, oh my God, I wasn't going to tell you about that. She said what happened was she saw lights, and she took the dog out that night, And then she went through and looked through the trees at this light, and she saw Heath in this circle. And she said what she then saw was Heath shift into a reptilian form and grow about 2 feet, which is absolutely common in descriptions of this all over the world. And she said he started speaking then in a voice a bit like, she described it as a bit like the old transatlantic telephone conversations when there was gaps. And she said the thing that shocked her more than anything else is that when this happened, no one in the circle moved in any way that related to shock or surprise. It seemed to them the most common thing, you could imagine. And from the American experience, and that lady too, then the synchronicity of my life started bringing more and more information in about it, and more people with experiences about it. And that's been the way my life has gone in the last 25 years. A subject will come out of nowhere into my life, and then suddenly, bang, information about that subject's coming from everywhere. And that's what happened with the reptilian thing. If you look at 2 themes of movies in recent times, and some of them not so recent times, but there's a big theme now. And I don't go to the movies very much because it's all really violence and stuff like that most of the time. But if it's for my research, I'll obviously go. One is a kind of a reptilian theme that you pick up, and the other one is, many times incorporated into the reptilian theme, and in alien invasions, is a well beyond Orwellian society where humans are under total control of a vicious police state and a tiny elite. I think if you look at John Carpenter, the creator of They Live, if you look at his movie-making history, which includes Satanism and horror and what have you, this guy has at least some knowledge of what's happening. And I had to laugh. I said this in a book once, years ago, and someone wrote to John Carpenter saying what I'd said. And he wrote back to him, I saw the letter, saying, no, it wasn't. The aliens, inside the people, I was symbolizing the Republicans. And you go, yeah, John, all right, yeah, okay, you were, yeah. I mean, anyone who's seen They Live will laugh at that. They Live, it's classic. And that time back too, where you have a small number of people who are actually not what they seem. They look human to people in everyday life, but when the guy put the sunglasses on that allowed him to decode reality on another level, that was the symbolism of it, he saw that they actually, behind the human form, they weren't human at all. And they were the people in power. They were the bankers, they were the politicians, they were the president, they were some of the police. Also, when he put the glasses on that subliminal level, he could see all the subliminal messages all around him, telling him to stay asleep, to not question, to obey authority. And it was a movie, it was kind of a B movie, wasn't it? A kind of, most people would never have heard of, and yet it was way ahead of its time in portraying the world that we're actually living in. What is happening, I would suggest, is that subconsciously, because there are so many with the same theme, it's laughable. Subconsciously, the human mind is being made familiar with something that if it wasn't made familiar with subconsciously in this way, when it is revealed, people would be in a massive, massive state of shock, whereas they're bringing it in slowly. So what they're doing is that on one level, they are preparing people to be familiar with and therefore be far more likely to accept without resistance the very Orwellian society that's being brought in by these reptilian hybrid bloodlines, because this archontic force has been working to manipulate human society over these, what we call in our version of time, thousands and thousands of years, to reach this point where they can take the whole thing over and turn humans into a slave race. Now, this is interesting, given what I've talked about in terms of this archontic reptilian force cannot create itself. It has to piggyback that which is already created. It cannot create the Orwellian society. It has to manipulate us to do it.